How's it going, everybody? So for this video, I'm going to do something I haven't done before. I'm going to go through all the full-time drivers, all 33 of them, 33, 34 of them in the field. And I'm going to give you my honest thoughts and rate them all, from overrated to underrated to properly rated. This is just my opinion. If you want to discuss what you think of every driver, weigh it down in the comments. But yeah, this is overrated, underrated, properly rated NASCAR edition. Let's get going. Trackhouse Racing, Ross Chastain. So Ross Chastain, he's been stuck with a bunch of crapmobile teams for the longest time. He broke out in trucks in 2019, had a subpar season in Xfinity with colleague in 2020 where he was very consistent but just could not get race-winning speed. He had a bit of a rough, mediocre year with Chip Ganassi in 2021, and then last year he really broke out getting 2 wins, and he was really a championship contender for much of the season. Like, to be perfectly honest, it was kind of criminal that this bullshit chase format robbed Chastain the championship, because to be honest, I think Chastain was better than Chase Elliott last year, and Chastain should have been the rightful champion. Some may argue that he's underrated, but I think as the longer his career goes, he'll end up being exactly who we think he is. Verdict: properly rated. Penske Racing, Austin Cindric. So Austin Cindric, I used to hate this guy when he dumped Kaz Grala at Motorsport in 2017 in trucks. But since that moment, he has slowly gotten matured and grown up and got a lot better. Proved that he's more than just a silver spoon kid and that he actually has talent. He proved that when he won the Xfinity title in 2020 over Chase Briscoe. And he had a really solid rookie year where he had his rookie growing pains despite winning the 500 last year. But he had some really good moments in last year, even making it deep in the chase, having one of the deepest runs in the chase since Chase Elliott in 2016. Easily had a good rookie season, even if some numbers won't suggest it. I think Austin Cindric is going to be a good driver over time. Verdict: properly rated. Richard Childress Racing, Austin Dillon. So Austin Dillon, he's been a bit of a polarizing driver in a lot of fans' eyes. Some fans will feel him overrated. He's definitely, I think, overrated for the most part. A lot of people mainly just hate him because he's just Richard Childress' grandson. But Austin Dillon has shown talent coming up through the ranks. Like, he was very solid in trucks, was also pretty solid in Xfinity. He has shown that talent, and that he's actually been pretty okay in a cup so far. Like, he's had some pretty underrated seasons. Granted, a few of his chase appearances were mainly because of the winning your in shtick, but he has made the most of it. He even made it to the round of 12 a couple times. He even had some solid moments. Like, I think if you put some solid equipment like we've seen in other series, Austin Dillon could actually maybe compete for something. You know, will he get that equipment with Richard Childress? Probably not, but maybe someday. Verdict: underrated. Stewart-Haas Racing, Kevin Harvick. So Kevin Harvick, we all know Harvick's career. Everyone knows. Easily one of the top drivers in the sport all time. A former Cup Series champion. His career really took off once he left Richard Childress Racing to drive the 4 for Stewart-Haas. He's been one of the top drivers in the sport since he came to Stewart-Haas. Has been one of the fastest drivers from 2014 to 2020. But since 2021, it seems like age has caught up to Kevin Harvick. But, you know, some people say Harvick is underrated because he could have maybe won more races and more championships if he was with a caliber team like Stewart-Haas Racing's entire career. But Richard Childress did give him opportunities, but Harvick just couldn't take advantage of it, unlike how he was at Stewart-Haas. He should have at least 2 championships, but he will be a one-ring wonder because of the bullshit known as the chase grid. Verdict: properly rated. Hendrick Motorsports, Kyle Larson. There's not much to say about Kyle Larson. Like, ever since Larson came to Hendrick Motorsports, Larson has been one of the top drivers in the sport. Had one of the most dominant championship seasons in 2021 since Jeff Gordon's Rainbow Warrior days, and during Jeff Gordon's reign of terror on the sport for an 8-year span from 1995 to 2001. Like, Larson has also helped change the culture at HMS with Rick Hendrick and Jeff Gordon, allowing all the drivers to go compete in other series. Like, there's a good chance Larson could have at least 3 or 4 championships and maybe 60, 70 wins in his career by the time it's all said and done. Not much else to say about Larson. Verdict, properly rated. RFK, Brad Keselowski. So Keselowski, he had a rough upcoming through the ranks, was struggling in his own equipment and trucks. He had a solid Xfinity stint with Penske Racing, which resulted in a championship and got him up the Cup. And in Cup of Penske, he had a pretty good career turnaround when it was looking like he was a bust. Was able to win the championship in 2012, stunning Jimmy Johnson. And really, he hasn't had another championship since then. But he's had some pretty solid seasons, even coming close to the championship again in 2020, but falling short. At RFK, he had one of his worst seasons last year since his rookie season. He might win 1 or 2 more races before his career's over, but I think it's safe to say his championship days from Penske are over at RFK. But he's still a very solid driver overall. Verdict, properly rated. Spire Motorsports, Corey LaJoie. So Corey LaJoie, he has a lot of potential in the lower ranks, especially during K&N East / ARCA East days. But in Cup Series, he's been really stuck in shit equipment his entire career. Was in Go Fast and was struggled there, with shit equipment, but made the most of that. He's been with Spire the last couple years since 2021, and he's had some pretty underrated solid runs in that Spire 7 car. It just makes you wonder, what if he had a shot at top equipment? I think if he had a shot at top equipment, he can easily be one of the top drivers in the sport. Could he have the opportunity one day? Maybe, but, still he's very underrated, and I think he doesn't get enough credit that he should. Verdict, underrated. Richard Childress Racing, Kyle Busch. If anyone's been a long-time follower on this channel of mine, everyone knows that I have hated Kyle Busch for the longest time. Like, in his Joe Gibbs Racing days, I've hated this motherfucker. And I was never because of his on-track ability. That was never in question. I mainly hated Kyle Busch because of his antics off the track, where it was just like, what the fuck are you doing? But Kyle Busch, he has slowly grown up finally, which just feels like it's been long overdue that he grew up finally. And Kyle Busch, he's easily one of the top drivers in the sport today. Easily a top 10 driver all time and a first ballot Hall of Famer in the future. Kyle Busch, though, I don't know if he ever goes back to his prime days in the late 2010s with RCR, but he could come close to it if all the cards play out. Be perfectly honest, I would like Kyle Busch a hell of a lot more if he didn't run an Xfinity and trucks all the goddamn time to pad his stats. Verdict, properly rated. Hendrick Motorsports, Chase Elliott. Well, not much else to say about Chase Elliott. Easily a top driver in the sport. Like anywhere we go, Chase Elliott's a favorite to win anywhere. Like, he's a great all-around driver on any type of track surface. Whatever you put him on, he knows how to get it done. Has even done some great racing too. Couldn't get a couple wins in SRX. Even won the championship in 2020. Last year was easily his best year before he had unfortunate circumstances play out at Phoenix that cost him the championship. Easily like Larson, Elliott could have three or four championships by the time it's all said and done. And probably 40 or 50 wins. To be perfectly honest with Chase Elliott, his career is literally what Dale Jr.'s career would have been had Dale Sr. not died in the 2001 Daytona 500. His fan base, though, gets a little bit rowdy, and I think they get a little more credit than they should. And I think they get way more praise than they should. Yes, every fan base has assholes, but it seems Chase Elliott's fan base tends to stand out most. There are some good Elliott fans that I'm friends with, but they always get shit on because of the village idiots in the fan base. Verdict, properly rated, but his fan base is overrated. Stewart-Haas Racing, Eric Almirola. So Almirola, he's been pretty okay in his career in the Cup Series. He struggled for the longest time at Richard Petty in the 43, but other than getting a rain-short win at Daytona in 2014. You know, his career has gone better once he got into a real ride in the 10 car at SHR. And really at SHR, he's been kind of mediocre at best. Other than 2018, where he had a really good season in 2018, but he hasn't come close to recapturing that magic since then. I'll just say this, he is at least better in the 10 car than Danica Patrick was, but considering how trash Danica was, that's not too high of a bar to clear. But he's not a bad driver, but not a good one either. He's in them somewhere in the middle. Verdict, properly rated. Joe Gibbs Racing, Denny Hamlin. So Denny Hamlin is easily NASCAR's most lovable loser. Like, easily the best driver in NASCAR to never win a championship. He's up there in that conversation with Junior Johnson for it. I mean, if Hamlin passes Junior Johnson on the all-time wins list without a championship, then Hamlin's easily a shoo-in for greatest driver without a championship. Like, it seems like Hamlin always finds nearly every single conceivable way to lose a championship. It's like, will he ever win a championship? I don't know. I think the clock is slowly starting to tick there, but Hamlin's still easily a top 10 driver one day, and regardless if he wins a championship or not, I don't think it's going to discredit his eligibility to be a first ballot Hall of Famer in the future. Verdict, properly rated. Penske Racing, Ryan Blaney. So Blaney, he's had a bit of an interesting up-and-coming career. Like, he was very solid in trucks. Xfinity, he had some good runs, but he really never had a full season Xfinity because of his truck series time. You know, in the Cup Series, though, he's had flashes, but, you know, everyone hypes him up as a championship contender, but he never really seems like the top driver at Penske Racing. It always seems like he's always second fiddle to Joey Logano. Like, everyone talks about how great and how clutch he is, when really you look at him, he's 0-11 in races he leads over 100-plus laps, and, like, he can never win a race he flat-out dominates. Like, the only time Blaney has ever won in his career is if it's like a late race pass and it's a race with an exciting finish. It's always like it's like always late in the race with an exciting finish at the end. You know, regardless of what happens with Blaney, though, he has a hot girlfriend. It's a Hooters model, so he always wins in bed no matter what he does on Sunday. But I think a lot of fans give him way too much praise than he should have. Verdict, overrated. Stewart-Haas Racing, Chase Briscoe. So Chase Briscoe, he had an interesting way of coming up through the ranks. You know, wasn't really known very well until his days in Xfinity when he torched the earth. Well, other than his ARCA days. But Xfinity, he really had some great showings, especially in 2021. You know, his career in Cup Series started off very slow, but he did show some promise late in the season when he had some good runs near the end of the year. But, you know, he's going to really have to step up, though, since it's looking like SHR is grooming him to be the #1 driver after Kevin Harvick retires after 2023. Can Briscoe take that next step up? I think he's trending in that right direction. So, I think Briscoe is going to be a pretty good driver. I think he's slowly starting to turn it around now and starting to get his groove in the Cup Series. Verdict, properly rated. Rick Ware Racing / Front Row Motorsports, Todd Gilliland. Yeah, there were times last year where I forgot Todd Gilliland still existed. Well, other than a couple of solid runs he had last year, he was pretty not irrelevant much of last year during his rookie season. Like, honestly, I think Todd Gilliland is an example of what happens when you rush a driver up to the Cup Series way too quickly. Like, he is still way too raw and needs to be put back in the oven. Like, it's also not a good sign, though, when he's not running the 38 full-time for Front Row and they're going to give some races to Zane Smith, as it looks like Front Row's getting Zane Smith warmed up to move up the Cup full-time in 2024 from the looks of it. And he will be running a couple races in the 15 for Rick Ware Racing. Like, when they're grooming your eventual replacement up this year, that's usually not a good sign for you. I think he needs to do what John Hunter Nemechek did and just restart from scratch. He's still a solid driver, though, but he was rushed up way too quickly. Verdict, properly rated. Colleague Racing, AJ Allmendinger. Man, AJ's had quite a career turnaround ever since he lost his career opportunity at Penske Racing when he failed that random drug test. Like, with how he's been the last couple years, especially in Xfinity, it makes you wonder what his career could have been if he was still in the 22 car at Penske and never failed that drug test. A big what if. But yeah, AJ, he was way too overqualified for Xfinity, and he had some solid seasons and was pretty mid-pack in the 47 at JTG. You know, he did get a win with Clyde in the 16 at Indianapolis in 2021. I kind of feel like, though, just given his age, though, I feel like he's just a bridge driver in that 16 car until Chandler Smith is ready for Cup. Because Clyde originally wanted Kyle Busch for the 16, but they failed to get him. So they had to sell with AJ Allmendinger as their next best option. But AJ's still a contender on the road courses for sure. Verdict, properly rated. RFK, Chris Buescher. So Buescher has had a pretty quiet career for much of his career. Like, he was mainly stuck in a couple seasons in the 34 for front row where he got a win at Pocono by fog. And then he had some pretty subpar seasons in the 37 at JTG. He would get his opportunity at Roush Fenway in 2020. And he's had some pretty underrated runs. Like, he always gets the absolute most out of his equipment. Like, easily without a doubt, if RFK could give him some top-notch equipment to compete with the top drivers in the sport, he can easily be a title contender. Like, easily, he doesn't get as much credit as he should. He easily flies under a lot of people's radars, without a doubt. Verdict, underrated. Joe Gibbs Racing, Martin Truex Jr. So Martin Truex Jr., his main career rise was, his main prime was 2015 to 2019 when he had Cole Pearn as his crew chief. With Cole Pearn, he won 24 races and got a championship with him, which that's pretty good. But in all those years without Cole Pearn, he has only won 7 times. And the only real time he came close to a championship without Cole Pearn was 2021. Like, other than that year, Truex has gone back to the same driver he was before Cole Pearn was partnered up with him in 2015. And I honestly don't feel like Truex is going to win another championship again without Cole Pearn wiping his ass for him. But to be perfectly honest, Truex and Cole Pearn should have won at least 2 championships. But I feel like they missed that mark too. Like, Truex 100%, most of his success will be with Cole Pearn. The only way Truex will ever get rid of the Cole Pearn narrative is winning a championship without him, and I don't think he does. Verdict, overrated. Joe Gibbs Racing, Christopher Bell. So Christopher Bell finally had his breakout season last year and actually lived up to the hype he came into the Cup Series with. Getting 3 wins and making it to the championship 4. Easily was a title contender this year. Like, without a doubt, I think he is one of the top drivers in the sport now. Like with Bell is now here. And I do think Bell could win a championship or 2 in his career before it's all said and done. But I do not think he's going to stay with Joe Gibbs Racing because of Joe Gibbs banning him from doing any dirt races in the future. Which, that ban is fucking stupid. I think Bell should be allowed to race whatever the fuck he wants, whenever he wants to. Like, to be honest, I think because of that ban, I do not think Bell stays at Joe Gibbs Racing. I think he will end his career with a different team. Probably the 4-car at SHR when Harvick retires. He could potentially be an option if he already gets fed up with Joe Gibbs bullshit. Verdict, properly rated. Wood Brothers Racing, Harrison Burns. So Harrison Burns, he was really solid in ARCA coming up through the ranks. He was nothing. He was garbage in trucks, but he had one good year in Xfinity when he had 4 wins in 2020. And then in 2021, he was kind of mediocre. And really in the Cup Series, there were times last year I forgot he existed. Outside of his third place run at Indianapolis last year. But he had some moments, but he definitely had his rookie growing pains. Like, I honestly feel like he was kind of rushed up the Cup way too quickly. I do think he could be a solid driver in the sport, but it may take some time for him to reach his true potential. We might come back to him in a couple years on this one. Verdict, properly rated. Penske Racing, Joey Logano. Man, I never thought there'd be a time where someone would overpass Kyle Busch as my most hated driver. But lo and behold, some fucking crazy misogynistic bastard did it, and it's this fuckboy, Logano. But Joey Logano mainly got his career opportunity at Penske Racing because of AJ Allmendinger failing a random drug test. He was looking like a certified bust during his career at Joe Gibbs Racing, but he made the most of his golden opportunity at Penske Racing, and somehow Mickey Moused his way to not one, but 2 championships at the expenses of Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain. Like, both his championships are illegitimate, and they're just a product of Brian France's NASCAR from the chase grid that Brian France made out of his coked out mind. Will Joey Logano ever win a legitimate championship? Maybe, but I have my doubts. Verdict: overrated. 2311 Racing, Bubba Wallace. So, Bubba Wallace is one of the most polarizing drivers in the sport. There are a lot of fans that love him, and a lot of fans that hate him, mainly because of the skin color, and because of what happened at Talladega 2020. An incident Bubba Wallace had nothing to do with, but it was just mainly thrown under the bus because of NASCAR's sheer and utter incompetence in handling that situation. But Bubba Wallace's career at 2311, well, he was stuck with Petty for the longest time but got the most out of that car. 2311, in his first year, he didn't have the equipment, but made the most of it. And then last year, he had the equipment, but his pit crew was so god-awful. I understand the pit crew was bad last year. But great drivers can overcome that adversity, and Bubba still hasn't made the chase yet in the 2 years so far. But now this year, Bubba Wallace has everything in tow, and he looks like he might have his attitude and more matured up. Like, without a doubt, Bubba Wallace has no more excuses in 2023. Verdict: overrated. Hendrick Motorsports, William Byron. So, in the 2 years William Byron has been with Rudy Fugle in the Cup Series at 2021, Byron had the consistency, but not the speed. Last year, Byron had the speed, but not the consistency. It's like I have no clue what Byron's identity is supposed to be with Rudy Fugle in the Cup Series. Like, it's always something different every year. Like, what's 2023 going to be? Are we going to have both speed and consistency, or is it going to be neither? But some people may make an argument so far, considering that 3 of Byron's 4 career wins in the Cup Series have come under Rudy Fugle, and some may say that he's a product of Rudy Fugle, considering that he also had a very competitive season in trucks at Rudy. But I don't 100% say he was a product of Rudy Fugle, considering that he was very good in K&N East and ARCA, along with also winning an Xfinity championship without Rudy Fugle in Xfinity. So I can't really 100% say he was a product of Rudy Fugle. You could make that argument, but maybe it could be a factor in the future, but I still think he's at least solidly a top driver, but somebody's got to step up this year. Verdict: properly rated. Colleague Racing, Justin Haley. I still sometimes keep forgetting that Justin Haley won at Daytona in 2019. But Justin Haley, he really has been kind of meh in the Cup Series. Like, he hasn't been good, but it hasn't been terrible. He's always been in the middle. He has had some pretty good runs. Like, he's easily a threat to win on the super speedways. And he's had some pretty underrated runs on the ovals. Like, 100%, if he can get some good equipment behind him and have some good success to get the right people around him, I think Haley could do some good things in the Cup Series. Like, I do not think he gets enough credit as he should. Verdict: underrated. Front Row Motorsports, Michael McDowell. Well, if it wasn't for the 2021 Daytona 500, the only memory anyone would have of Michael McDowell would have been his 2008 flip at Texas in qualifying. But Michael McDowell, we've seen the last couple years, especially last year with Front Row, the last couple of years, that he's actually a pretty underrated driver. Like, he easily gets the absolute most out of his equipment with Front Row. He's been an absolute journeyman that's been stuck in shitbox teams for much of his career, from the 98 at Premium to the 95 at LaFine Family Racing. and then 34 at front row. Like, he has been with a lot of different crapmobile teams. It always makes you wonder, what if he always had a shot with a top-tier team? Like, maybe if he had a shot at a top-tier team, we could be talking about more than just one Daytona 500 win. But easily, just makes you wonder, what if? But McDowell should honestly get a lot more praise than he should. Verdict, underrated. Stewart-Haas Racing, Ryan Preece. So Ryan Preece is finally getting his first shot with a legit team. Of course, in the Cup Series, he was mainly in JTG Daugherty Racing for 3 years. And of course, he was more well known for getting outperformed by Ricky Stenhouse for 2 years in a row, which kind of made me question his ability as a driver, to make me question what people saw in him. But he has been good in a lot of different series. He had good runs in trucks and Xfinity, and he's a goddamn beast in modifieds. But now for the Cup Series in the 41, a lot of people even question why Preece was getting this opportunity and saying that Pete Colcuster should have stayed in this ride. Well, for Ryan Preece, he now has his opportunity. This is easily put up or shut up for him this year. Verdict, properly rated. Legacy Motor Club, Noah Gragson. So Noah Gregson's finally in the Cup Series after making the most of his time in Xfinity and really becoming an absolute beast in Xfinity, especially the last 2 years. Once he finally got up to his hype as advertised, was pretty mediocre in trucks, but he did have some solid runs in ARCA West and ARCA. But Xfinity was really when his career really took off. Like, he should have been the champion last year, but he was screwed over because of the bullshit known as the chase grid. But it's going to be interesting to see how he does with Jimmy Johnson as his boss now in the 42 car. But 100% regardless of what happens, he's the type of guy I would let have sex with my girlfriend 100%. He's that damn sexy. Verdict, properly rated. Legacy Motor Club, Eric Jones. So Eric Jones has been an interesting case. Like, Eric Jones, he really didn't live up to the hype he had when at Joe Gibbs Racing. Was pretty disappointing at JGR. But at Petty GMS, now Legacy Motor Club, he was able to actually have a pretty underrated season last year. Even getting a win at Darlington and sticking it to Joe Gibbs Racing, which is something I like to see as a fan of a rival team. You could make a case about him being overrated because of 2019 when he had one win and got eliminated in the first round while his 3 other teammates all made it to the Final Four. You could also say he's underrated because of his season last year. I mean, it's very borderline, but I think, you know what, just for the sake of argument, I'm just going to meet in the middle on the rating. Verdict, properly rated. 2311 Racing, Tyler Reddick. So Reddick finally gets his shot at a decent team and a good opportunity here as he's now being tapped on to be 2311's #1 guy at the team. After it was very clear that his career at RCR, it was literally going to end up being just a rerun of Kyle Larson's career at Chip Ganassi Racing, where Reddick was going to be held back from his true potential. But now Reddick gets to be the #1 guy at a team that's trying to become the Toyota's top team. He had his breakout season last year and had his great moments. Like, honestly, I feel like he's a lot better than some people may say. Like, easily Reddick, I think Reddick is going to be the top guy and be a top driver in the sport for years to come. Always gets the absolute most out of his equipment and outperforms it. I think he could win 2311 a championship by the time it's all said and done. Verdict, properly rated. JTG Daugherty Racing, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. So Stenhouse has been love-hate by a lot of fans. I mean, you either love him or you hate him. I don't think there's really an in-between with him. Like, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., like, he has been stuck in midfield equipment his entire career ever since he came to Roush. Because when he came to Roush Fenway, he was with a Roush team that was beginning to decline after Matt Kens had left, and then it really went downhill after Carl Edwards left, as Carl Edwards turned out to be the glue that was still holding the team together for at least 2 years after that. But he's been in midfield equipment much of his career. He mainly gets a lot of hate because of how aggressive he drives on super speedways. because he's a very aggressive driver, which I have really no fault with it as long as you know what you're doing. But Ricky Stenhouse Jr., he's had some solid runs with JTG, even has 2 wins in his career. So we've seen in other series, he can be good if you give him some top-tier equipment. Like, if he was in a top-tier ride, he could easily be a top 5, top 10 driver in the sport. Like, I think he mainly doesn't get much credit and just gets overhated because of how he drives. Verdict, underrated. Hendrick Motorsports, Alex Bowman. So, for a few years, Alex Bowman looked like he was going to be a pretty forgettable driver when he was stuck in shitbox rides at Premium and BK Racing. Until Dale Jr. suffered his concussion in 2016, that would lead to him ending his career early and forcing an early retirement. And Alex Bowman was forced in to sub for Jr. in 2016. But Alex Bowman, he would surprise a lot of people and make the most of that opportunity and prove that there was something in him after all. And he would get the opportunity to take over the car after Dale Jr. retired. And Bowman has been pretty solid in that car. Like, hasn't been 100% good, but he's not 100% terrible. He's in the middle. Well, despite 2021 with his breakout season where he won 4 races, but main issue with Bowman is he's very inconsistent. Like, he's equivalent of boom or bust. Like, Bowman's pretty much NASCAR's version of Kirk Cousins. He always puts up solid numbers, but no one tends to take him very serious when it matters the most. But Bowman is going to be a pretty solid face with HMS now that he signed his new 3-year extension. Verdict, properly rated. Rick Ware Racing, Cody Ware. How the fuck was Cody Ware good in Asian Le Mans? Like, because in the Cup Series, he has been the equivalent of garbage. Like, he is easily one of the worst drivers in the fucking field. And the only reason he's in a ride in the Cup Series is because his dad owns Rick Ware Racing. Like, if his dad didn't own a team, Cody Ware would be nowhere near the Cup Series. The thing is, though, I can't say Cody Ware is overrated because if everyone knows that Cody Ware sucks, is he truly overrated? Like, to be honest, Cody Ware, he's exactly who we think he is, and that's garbage. Plus, he's kind of a weirdo on Twitter and Instagram with some of his videos, and he's kind of a closet weeaboo, too. Verdict, properly rated. Joe Gibbs Racing, Ty Gibbs. So Ty Gibbs was very polarizing in Xfinity because of the way he drove and also when he dumped his teammate Brandon Jones at Martinsville like a douche and then getting an undeserved Xfinity Mickey Mouse Championship and just being a product of Brian Francis coked out of his mind NASCAR. Win an Xfinity title at the expense of Noah Gragson, but he was an absolute fucking beast in ARCA and just scorched that series alive, having a very most dominant season there since Frank Kimmel. Like, honestly, going in the Cup, I think he's going to be in a similar situation that Kevin Harvick and Dale Jr. were both in 2001, following the death of Dale Sr., with Ty Gibbs losing his father, Coy, after winning the Xfinity title last November. Now, usually changing a parent changes you a lot mentally. Now, whether that change is going to be for the good or not is yet to be seen. But with how much that Ty has rubbed people the wrong way, I feel like he's going to be in for a rude awakening this year. But 3 to 5 years down the line, I feel like he's going to be the top driver of Joe Gibbs Racing. And I think he's going to win a few championships by the time his career is all said and done and be a top driver in the sport all time, once he gets his attitude adjusted by the field. Verdict, properly rated. Spire Motorsports, Ty Dillon. So Ty Dillon has been pretty irrelevant much of his Cup Series career. I haven't really heard much of him throughout his career in the Cup Series. Like, he's just been there. Like, he hasn't been good, but he hasn't been terrible at the 100%. Okay, maybe a little terrible. Like, he showed some promise for 1 year in ARCA in 2011, but he hasn't really come close to any series to that mark since then. You know, he's been thrown out of a couple teams after 1 year, after a couple years, like a used condom, was thrown out of Germain Racing. was thrown out of the 96 for the Gaunt brothers. You know, he was thrown out after 1 year in the 42 at Petty GMS for Gregson. And now he's in the 77 for Spire in his second or third get your shit together moment. Like with Cody Ware, if everyone knows he sucks, is he truly overrated? But 100% he's the inferior of the Dillon brothers. And he will forever live in Austin Dillon's shadow. Which, to be honest, that's not too much of a shadow, though. Verdict, properly rated. And finally, Trackhouse Racing Daniel Suarez. So Suarez had a lot of hype coming up through this ranks. Like, he started off in the Mexico series, was very good in that series. Had some good runs in ARCA as well. Even a couple solid runs in trucks too. You know, won an Xfinity championship in 2016. And let's be honest, his career at Joe Gibbs Racing, he was fucked from the get-go because he was rushed up way too quickly. But it was one of those situations where Joe Gibbs had no choice but to rush him up after the shocking retirement of Carl Edwards. And then he was cut after 2 years from Truex Jr. And then Suarez had a 2-year period where he was thrown out of Stewart-Haas Racing and the Gaunt brothers after 1 year each, like a used condom. But he would land on his feet at Trackhouse when they started up, and he was very solid for Trackhouse right from the get-go. Even finally getting his first career win with Trackhouse last year at Sonoma, and even making it to the chase and going as far as the round of 12. Like 100%, I think by the time it's all said and done, I think Daniel Suarez will be the best international driver in Cup Series history. I think he's better than Montoya and Marcus Ambrose. 100%. Verdict, properly rated.